Hello, I am Sandra Lee, and this is Thursday Tips for Thriving. Today, I am talking about the energy of food. So, I am going to be a little bit distracted here for a second as I try to find this live in Facebook so I can catch any comments that you might have or questions that you might have for me. Here we go. All right. So you are welcome to put questions in the chat there in Facebook so that I can respond to them. And if you want to even log into StreamYard, then I'll even see you here on my screen. Okay, so I am talking about the energy of food. And just like I did a couple of weeks ago with looking at the energy associated with clothing and color and appearance, this is really fun. Doing Biofield tuning as I think about each of these different aspects of food and to see how my system responds to it. So let me confirm again. Yes, I am on the live there. Okay. So thinking about food, okay, I make my food every day pretty much from basic ingredients. So whole food eating. Occasionally we do buy packaged food, but really not very much for our main meal. So I spend a significant amount of time and effort making the food that we eat. And I do this because I enjoy it and because I know that it supports our health. Okay. So when I think about the meals that I post pictures of my food every day, and I think about sitting down to eat that food, just like when I talked with Amy yesterday, and she said, how do you approach the table? How do you approach eating the food that you are going to eat? How do you feel about it? What's the experience like? So, for me, the experience of sitting down to eat is generally really good because I know that I've just spent the time to prepare this food and I know what's in it. I've controlled the ingredients for the most part. There are occasionally ingredients that have preservatives, flavorings, and things like that in them, but mostly it's just whole food. So, how do I feel sitting down to the table to that meal? And it just feels like open and flowing. There's this anticipation, looking forward aspect to it. Now, I know that just from experience that almost always the meals that I make are pretty good, tasty, enjoyable. I don't know if I've ever made a meal that was so poorly cooked or whatever that, we didn't want to eat it or we choked it down as if it was like the only food left. That doesn't happen, right? So if I think about having a meal like that, that's like it's burnt or it's too spicy or has flavors in it that I don't like, thinking about that. And even before I strike the tuning fork, right? There's this feeling in my body of like, ugh, icky and dense and darkness. Okay. So that's what it's like looking to eat something that isn't enjoyable or that I anticipate that there might be something negative in the experience about it. So I'm going to refresh my screen here, just in case I can see your comments. And then maybe that's not going to work. Yeah, we'll see. Okay. And then I think about going to a restaurant and a restaurant where the food is really good and we know we like it there and just anticipating that. And again, there's that uplifting, open feeling to it and a brightness in the sound and it just feels wonderful. Sometimes I've gone to a restaurant and I've been disappointed in the food. Um, it wasn't warm or it didn't taste good or there was just something about it that I didn't like. And usually this is going to a restaurant where I don't particularly like or haven't had the food first time trying it. Anytime I go to a restaurant for the first time, you never really know what I'm going to get. So, but just this is like, you know, dissatisfied. Or like we went to a restaurant recently where the ownership has changed and the food was not nearly as good as it usually is. Um, we just weren't happy with it. So it's like thinking about going into that environment. And it's like, it feels like there's some hopefulness, but also, dissatisfaction with it as well, like kind of a mixture of emotions. Because thinking about going into that situation, again, there's that hopefulness. Anytime I try a new restaurant, it's like, hey, maybe this is going to be the best restaurant we've ever been to. So thinking about that, there's that uplifting hopefulness, and then it's like, oh, the dissatisfaction that happens. And thinking about the dissatisfaction, right? So it's like there's this, and there's like this down energy that goes along with that. So, um, thinking about going to a restaurant with friends, like Amy and I talked about yesterday, it's like making food with other people and sharing food with other people is one of my very favorite activities in the world. So, thinking about going with some really good friends to a restaurant and enjoying that food. And again, there's just like this joy, this playfulness, this openness. It's like, yay, yeah, let's go and have fun and laugh and share. One of the things about I love about going to restaurants, particularly the types of restaurants that have multiple different dishes, like Thai restaurants, or where you get to share food. That is just so much fun and delicious. And like, I look forward to those occasions. Thinking about what it's like going to a friend's house and making food together, and again, sharing that food together. And that is just one of my very favorite things. It's just yeah, it brings to mind, the laughter and the conversation. Thinking about food, this is a community event. It's a social event. Whether the community and the social is just, me and my husband, or, extended family, or a circle of friends, or going to my friend's house and we make food. It's social. It is healing just by nature of the social interaction. And again, it's just, love it. Okay. Um, Different food situations. Say, I go to a potluck. And again, there's definitely that wonderful social aspect to it. And something I love about potlucks is getting to try food that other people made and a whole variety of different things. Potlucks are so much fun because of that, right? It's like I get to have wonderful food, usually made by real life people as opposed to packaged food. But even if somebody brought packaged food, if I'm not interested in it, I don't have to eat that packaged food because there's many other options. One of the best things about potlucks is the trying the variety of things that I would never make. So that again has that wonderful feeling to it. Isn't it lovely? Okay, now I have some actual food here that I pulled off my shelves in the refrigerator to do a similar kind of test with. Thinking about um, what it's like having completely cooked food. So, when food gets cooked, there's a different energy to it. Um, Raw food, like this cucumber or this carrot, has enzymes in it that help to digest the food. And it's like it's still got some life in it. But when food is cooked, the enzymes in the food get destroyed. And some of the nutrients in the food also can get damaged by heat. Now, that's not to say that I'm going to eat everything raw because I can't. Um, there's value to cooking food as well, depending on what it is, because some of the nutrients are more available when food is cooked compared to if it is raw. So I don't have any grain here, but if I did, I wouldn't want to eat grain raw because it's not digestible. It's not usable by the body. So eating grain cooked is more digestible, more usable to the body. So it's like there's some things that really need to be cooked for us to derive value from it. Okay. Other things, it's much more beneficial to have raw. So if I were to cook a cucumber, this is a lemon cucumber, by the way. If I were to cook a cucumber, it's like, ick. I wouldn't want to cook a cucumber. I might cook a carrot. So if you see my pictures, you see that I had carrot soup a while ago. And so that there's, times where I might want to cook carrot, but the energy and the nutritional value is going to change when I cook something. So I'm going to look at the energetic difference between this raw carrot and the fermented carrots that you've seen on my plates. And I will also bring to mind the carrot soup that is sitting in the refrigerator because we can test that too. Okay, so let's look at the difference between raw and cooked. So with this carrot, for example, okay? So let's think about the energy of this actual raw carrot. And there's an energy, a moving up, some aliveness, okay? However, this carrot was bought from the store, and I have no idea when it was harvested. It might have been a while ago. So looking at a raw carrot still has some enzyme activity in it, but really to maximize the value of raw foods would be to eat them as soon as they were harvested. So to imagine what it's like having the energy of eating a carrot that was just harvested from the garden. Yeah, even more aliveness, right? We have carrots growing in our garden. And so it's like there's just more energetic activity associated with thinking about consuming a freshly harvested carrot. But there's still energy in this carrot. Now, let's look at the energy of the fermented carrots. Okay. Now, I think I made a live video, okay, of me doing the fermenting that we did with this a while ago, a month or so ago. So looking at, again, the aliveness that gets added by the fermentation process. Okay, so this is not cooked. It's just grated and then mixed with a brine, salt, water solution so that it ferments and it creates beneficial bacteria, probiotic bacteria that are highly beneficial for health. So there's going to be even more aliveness in this than with um, the even the garden carrot, I would have bet. Oh yeah. So already I can just like just the activity of the life that's in that bottle of fermented carrots. They're lacto fermented, by the way, is what it's called when you ferment vegetables. So just like, and thinking about how my body responds and benefits from that food, it's like there's a nourishing, opening energy from the fermented carrots. Okay. Now, thinking about the cooked soup that I have in my refrigerator from those carrots. So there's less aliveness in it, but it's, still got some aliveness, some movement, some energy. This was a spicy carrot soup, and so I can feel the energy of the spiciness. Yeah. Now, let's compare the energy of the freshly cooked soup and the canned tomatoes. Okay, so this is cooked, certainly, and it's been on the shelf since we canned it in, you know, 2011. It's actually been a while. So it's been 10 years that these tomatoes have been in this jar. So it's like you can say that that would be a similar energy to buying canned tomatoes. But we're going to compare this and then we're going to think about canned tomatoes as well and see how that's different. Okay. So the energy of home canned tomatoes. And again, there's a different energy to it than with the cooked soup that I just thought about. So it's like the energy is lower and it moves less than the energy for the freshly made soup that I have in the refrigerator that we eat. Okay. But it's still got, some energy, some movement. And then thinking about canned tomatoes, like buy it off the shelf in a can. And it's got, a similar kind of energy to this. Okay. Now, canned tomatoes also have minimal additional ingredients. So there might be some salt. There might be some sort of preservative in canned tomatoes, but there's not a lot of other stuff in it. So if I were to think about having canned soup, for example, that I personally wouldn't buy, but it's available and there's all kinds of ingredients in it. There's flavorings, there's preservatives, there's the, um, ingredients that I don't necessarily want, which is why I don't buy canned soup anymore. I used to have canned soup all the time when I was a child, grew up on canned soup. Okay. Now I know that there's a lot of ingredients in there that are not particularly beneficial for my health, so I don't buy it. Okay. But so thinking about how my body would respond to having canned soup. So it's like when I was a child, one of my favorite foods was Campbell's cream of mushroom soup. Right. So it's like to think about having that food now is like there's just like a heaviness in my stomach and it's like, ugh. when when I was talking with Amy yesterday, right? We were talking about this whole thing about favorite foods and how when we have them now as adults, how it's like, oh, my perception and my experience of that food might be totally different now than it was before. And so it's like I thought about that yesterday. Okay. So thinking about having canned soup and just like this down sinking heavy feeling and thinking about the chemicals, right? It's like, ooh, there's just like this in my energy system having to process and deal with the chemicals that are in that food. So not so good. I mostly avoid that now. If I were to be in a situation where I were consuming it, I would, like if I were somebody else's house or whatever, knowing that that's just not my normal fare. But so there's that about canned. Okay. Now let's look at something else. Okay. I have um cheese here. This is the cheese that we sprinkle on our salads every day. But I also know that sometimes, you know, I don't eat a lot of dairy because I have found that sometimes my body reacts to it a little bit. I'm fine with small amounts. And some days in other meals and foods like that. So thinking about consuming the cheese feels okay. So it's like there's some activity, not like, yum, this is my favorite thing, but it's good. Okay. Thinking about the peppers the mild peppers that you've seen in my pictures in recent times. We slice it in half and put cheese on top and bake it. Similar experience to, how my body responds to the cheese. Okay. So now let's look at this is coconut oil. So, um, nice healthy fat again, and it feels like fuel, right? So it's like there's this energy, nutrient value that I feel with the coconut oil. Okay. And it feels like there's nutrient value with the cheese as well. Yeah. Okay. Now let's look at a different coconut product to see if there's a difference. This is coconut cream concentrate. So it's basically whole coconut ground up so that there's coconut meat in it and it's been in that jar for a while. So it feels a little different from the coconut oil. So a little bit heavier response to the coconut cream concentrate, which is fine. It's a heavier product. There's there's fiber in it and there's some protein, you know, a little bit more carbohydrate in it. Um, but the coconut cream is good. Okay. Now let's look at um, my, we already did the carrot. Okay. Now let's look at the cucumber. The cucumber was bought at the farmer's market last week. And so it's significantly fresher than that carrot is that's been in the refrigerator for a while. So there's more aliveness with that cucumber. Now let's look at this plum. Okay. Feels pretty similar to the cucumber. So looking at fresh vegetables and fruits and the response to them. Lettuce, good. I didn't grab my Caesar dressing, but I make Caesar dressing, and that's what's on the salads that we eat every day. And I make it with really good high quality olive oil and anchovies and garlic and, really good stuff. And again, it just feels really good. Nourishing, supporting, tasty, all of that. Now, let's look at, I also brought like chocolate. My food consumption isn't perfect, right? So sometimes I have chocolate. This happens to have nuts and cranberries in it. Okay. So it's like, how does my body respond to the chocolate? Not the same as when I'm working with fresh vegetables and things like that, but it's not terrible. So, compared to chocolate that has more sugar and that's, I mean, I choose this product pretty carefully. I read ingredients and things like that. So it's like thinking about like a candy bar that I would get at a grocery store. Okay. There's an energy in my body. So thinking about consuming more sugar than is necessarily beneficial for me, there's just too much activity, too much craziness. In my article that I am writing for next week's guest expert, I talk about this whole sugar thing. My next week's guest expert, by the way, is Raina Don Lutz, and she's a holistic nutritionist. And we are talking about eating for clear thinking. And so the sugar piece is part of that. Okay. So it's like looking at the busyness that happens in the body in response to sugar. It's just like a large amount of blood sugar that causes a reactivity in the body. I talk about this in my article, and we'll talk about it next week. So it's like some sugar, blood sugar is necessary and important, but too much causes an issue. So the amount of sugar in this is pretty low, and it's not going to cause that excessive reaction. So it's like if I were to think about having a Snickers bar, candy bar that I used to have, it's like there's a wildness that happens in the body in response to that. And then thinking about the crash that then comes after that consumption of excessive amounts of sugar. So it's like, I was like, woo, and then so there's that. I don't have any questions from anybody about food, but this has been interesting for me. I haven't done this exploration before. So I come to these Thursday Tips for Thriving sessions with an actual experiment to do because I am curious. I want to know. Just like when 2 weeks ago, I did this same exploration when it comes to clothes and style and color and stuff like that. It's like, this was fun for me to learn how my body responds to food. And you can take from this for yourself a little bit of insight into how your body might respond to food. Because the questions that I was asking about food are things that everyone gets to deal with, right? So it's like, do I have cooked food? Do I have raw food? Do I have processed food? Do I have things that have been on the shelf for a really long time? Do I have fresh? Do I have food that is sweet as opposed to food that is vegetables? And how does the body respond to each of these different stimuli, each of these different inputs? It's valuable information that is nice to have for me as I go through my life making food choices. Fortunately, I've been working on this for decades. So I already eat pretty clean food. But if there are people out there, maybe you, who are wanting to get from eating packaged foods, standard American diet, or whatever, to more whole foods, cooking your own foods like I do, so that you start to see, oh, there's different influences on how I respond to these different aspects of food. I hope this has been interesting to you. I know it's been fun for me. I would love it if you would leave comments and just interact with this. Tell me what you think. Do you like these Thursday Tips for Thriving sessions? Are there particular things that you want me to talk about? Because I'm open. I have been having guest experts for a while. So I talk about the things that they are interacting with me about. So next week, as we are talking with Raina Don Lutz on Wednesday, and her article will be about food, and my article is about food. We're going to be talking about food again next week. So look forward to that. If you have questions about biofield tuning and how biofield tuning might help you in your business, then, or you in your life or in your business, then reach out. I'd be happy to talk with you. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day. Breathe.